один из спикеров хочет ходить по сцене.
Микрофон бар ма ішінде? Бар ма не? Жан жақта тұрсын, мұнда шығып қоймаса. Не знаю, они выходят, наверное, да? Просто пакет нужно устроить, не видно?
Машина это сломала, да?
Да. Қабылдай ма? Жоқ, бірінші жаңағы телефонда өшіріп айтамыз.
Анау қонақтарды шақырмасқа бір видео бар дейді ауыз.
Атты ма? Сөйлей ма? Мен сразу айтам ба мынаны? Бесікті. Бірінші сен, екінші мен қайтамын. Маған не жоқ мынаған, мынандай ет. Дауысы шығады. Губка керек дейді, губка. Бесік нормально. Алшықтау керек, но дауысы қатты айқай береді анда. Блокированный кие алмаймын. Осының бәрін пакетін айтты ма?
Құрметті конференциямыздың қатысушылары.
Бір. Просто поздоровался? Все заметили, что с тобой типа один бір құрметті отстауға болады екен кішкене губка салып қою керек па өзінің арына кигізіп қоятын губкасы болады нешеде айтамыз мына уақыт точно келеді ма келмей ма тоже вопрос
Вы сейчас стоите, что объявляете сейчас?
Отпишите, пожалуйста, телефон.
Только это говорите, и все, да?
15:40 у нас примерно запланировано. Они сказали, сначала будет видеоролик про...
Нет, сначала 4 спикера вышло, и потом вы объявляете благотворительный проект, да? Когда ты объявляешь его, тогда слово ведущий после каравана, последний, когда он будет, и будет ведущий, тогда пойдем, я тебе его покажу. Ничего не меняем. Они вот 4 все пройдут, полностью все 4 пройдут, потом благотворительный проект в конце сам.
Окей, начало все нормально. Вы говорите,
всё.
с телефона и все, да?
Да, и все. Больше ничего не меняем.
Что вас осталось? Потом вы приглашаете спикеров?
Нет, зачем вы приглашаете? Спикеров Рауан позовет.
Шамасваева, Бахарбаева.
Этих, которые, которые эти, да. Рауан, вот когда последний закончится, вы им говорите thank you very much, садитесь, и ведущие прям подойдут сразу и начинают они говорить благотворительно.
Вы ничего не говорите,
Да,
просто
ничего не
заканчиваем,
говоришь,
всё.
они сожгутся.
И после того ко мне Гена Ахтасис.
Так, везде...
Сразу выкинет, Рауан, должно быть. Еще такая же.
ну секцияны
Нет, там нет, просто нет, там вроде нет, просто видео вот так и надо иметь все. А вы несколько слов скажете дальше.
Мен аяқтап, сосын сөз жүргізуге берейін дейді.
біз өзіміз шақырамыз осыларды мен сұрап алайын қазір шақырғаннан кейін бар пәтер шақырамыз
Да, сядут чуть-чуть. Айгерим и этот.
құрметті қонақтар орындарымызға жайғасайық
Distinguished guests. Greetings, distinguished colleagues, distinguished teachers, our dear guests. In Kazakhstan, in Astana, the traditional conference is taking place, so welcome. My name is Rawan Kenjikhanullah. I am the head of the Bilim Media Group. I have been taking part in this conference for several recent years, always happy to see colleagues, fellow experts. This is indeed a great event that is showcasing the achievements and gives opportunities for sharing knowledge and expertise. Today, I am moderating a session that is dedicated to a very relevant for Kazakhstan, very important topic. For a country like us, with such a big territory, and the sphere of education requires a lot of organizational, infrastructural efforts, and the new technology, the digital opportunities and capabilities are allowing for efficient provision of education, and they are very important for us. And the first question we ask ourselves is, what do we get from those new digital technology? This is a question that is being raised globally. Many research institutions are dealing with that. In the process of education, the personal capabilities of each child needs to be taken into account. So how do we assure that using digital technology in the educational process? How do we introduce this technology efficiently for a personalized education? This has been actively discussed in the pedagogical science scholarly domain for recent years. This is a new initiative, the personalization in education, and there are many specialist experts. Together with Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools, we conduct a variety of projects, especially we were active during the pandemic. You know that all students in Kazakhstan were using the online Mektep, which is the online school for distance learning. Our specialists took part in this process, as well as advanced teachers of Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools. We have prepared the content for this platform, and in my opinion, in this domain, we need to make sure that we build upon and take into account the expertise of our foreign fellow researchers. And we value this opportunity and appreciate this opportunity to have this specialist with us here in Kazakhstan. It's not, an easy task to get such experts for these 2 days into Kazakhstan. So my special thanks goes to NIS for this.
Dear speakers, I think we really have outstanding panelists here, and it is my privilege and great honor to introduce our speakers. So Tim Watts has undertaken wide-ranging international comparison of the performance of education systems, advised OECD on its curriculum review work, regularly conducts briefing sessions, and advises the government on of the United Kingdom and other countries. So could you please show yourself to audience? Daryl DJ West, he's the National Director of Professional Learning at McGraw-Hill, which is one of the biggest publishing houses in the world. So please welcome. And now I would like to give the floor to Tim Watts. And I think the topic he has is really great introduction to our session today. What personalization of learning means in the modern world. Please.
Thank you very much indeed for that very kind introduction, and of course, thank you so much, Kulyash and Nazipa, for the kind invitation to present again to an NIS conference. 13 conferences, 11 years, fantastic history for NIS. Yes, what you have done for young people in your country is fantastic. And you've contributed to leading thinking on curriculum and assessment and support to young people. It's just fabulous. And who thought we would be here again in so many years later? You're going to think I am anti-digital, okay? That's what you're going to think. But I have been observing lessons for nearly 30 years now, and I come to this conference having observed recently some brilliant lessons using iPads, at the same time using a smart board. Really interesting, leading-edge teaching by incredibly professional teachers using technology. In Cambridge, we've produced some applications which are used widely in schools in England. We have one application called Isaac Physics, which is used in nearly 100% of our secondary schools. No, I am not anti-digital, but I am aware that billions of dollars have been made available by venture capital to produce now over 300,000 EdTech applications. How do you choose between them? They are not all good. Now that's what I'm going to deal with today, and focus on the issue of personalized learning. Now, we heard David talk absolutely about elaborate and sophisticated approaches to understanding where we are going in learning. Peter Mehisto will repeat in a sophisticated way the way we need to approach the learning of each and every child. Iram mentioned the importance of neuroscience. I will come to all of these. But we have to look at impact. And what I'm going to argue is that personalized learning and individualized learning as phrases have featured heavily in the new statements about the future of education. And increasingly, their personalized learning will be the term which an EdTech company will use to describe its product. But there are many different meanings of this term. It appears in different ways, in different applications and different places. And I'm going to argue that some of the statements are wrong. We have to be critical, we have to be scientific, and we have to maintain that critical stance. And really, for 20 years, we have analyzed in Cambridge the models and statements which are being proposed not just by EdTech companies, but also by governments. And there are problems. Now, of course, learning is personal. It's my learning. It's your learning when you try to achieve something new. It is yours. It's your personal capital. But that doesn't mean that learning is isolated. It doesn't mean it is done simply by someone working by themselves. That's the problem. So when we look at some of the statements, look at the key terms. Analyze the statements for the key words. We have pace. We have optimized for each learner. We have self-initiated. This is in the US Department's statement of 2017. These are good by themselves, but if they add up to an instructional sequence which varies according to individual needs, then you run the risk of every child in the same classroom trying to have a different curriculum. And at that point, research tells us you have overload. You have overload for the teacher, and you also have problems in terms of social learning. And you also have problems in self-initiated. Now, I mentioned this to Peter last night. If we want fewer women studying science, let 8-year-old girls go with what they want to do at the age of 8. Okay, that's the problem. So that's the state, and I think that's got a number of really difficult problems embedded in it. In England, we have a similar set of statements, but these are interesting. They're quite different. They're things that you would agree with. A highly structured and responsive approach to each child and young person's learning. Very good. Very good that we're emphasizing the links between parents and learners, and parents and schools. But these are very general. So what happens when we get to the detail? Well, let's go back to America again. This culminates in an extraordinary statement that in order to meet every student's needs, everywhere at any time, we have to use things that are not available within the four walls of the traditional classroom. And this really, I believe, is quite wrong, because it leads to the notion that there is something fundamentally wrong with schooling, with having children in the institutions we call schools. And I started with the fact that I've observed brilliant lessons using the latest technology and improving equity and attainment. I will come on to learning outside school, of course, in a moment. So let's just look at the claims and the key words. Caring for the individual child. Yes, absolutely. Children moving at their own pace. No, actually. That has all sorts of dangers in it, particularly for early years, primary and lower secondary. If every child is moving at their own pace, they are not able to discuss the same idea that they all are trying to master. Children following their own interest. No, that's problematic. Really, children have all sorts of prejudices and stereotypes about what men and women should do in work. And if they just follow their own preferences from an early age, we will consolidate those stereotypes and prejudices. Differentiation, different curricula for different child. Some models are good, but some are just give rise to chaotic, unmanageable experiences and a chaotic, unmanageable process for the institution. Varying instructional approaches to match the preferences of the child? Yes, but then also, if they only go with a particular mode or model of, a particular mode of learning, then where is that commitment to a repertoire, a range of learning styles that each and every child needs? Personalization cannot take place at scale without technology, another claim in these policy statements. And I think that is true. To really harness an appropriate form of personalization, which I will come on to, technology can play a key role. Learner-initiated activities, I'm afraid the science is really against this in early years and through to primary and lower secondary. Yes, play-based processes. Yes, learners excited and motivated by the range of opportunities they have, but the teacher direction through those activities is vital to actually bring the child's cognitive attention to the things that they should be drawing out of the experiences that they have. The point is, there are many, many models, and there are many, many claims. Personalization is not a simple model, or a simple theory, or a single model. So we must maintain critical perspectives. Now, personalization came in England from the idea of Charles Ledbetter and Demos, that actually it should be there in all public services, in health, in education, and it was really to do with politics, not to do with the critical detail that we have in learning theory. I mean, personalized care in cancer, fantastic. That's exactly what we need. Genetic treatments tailored to my own particular morphology and chemistry. But it can't be simply transferred to education. Personalization sells more things. Even if it's a machine that's done it for you, if you're on your phone and buying something and you feel you've had a personalized experience, you feel better about it. But what Helen Abadsi says is that's very difficult and an illusion. It is people actually manipulating a back door to your consciousness. What a lot of these models actually ignore in this idea of individuals at their own pace doing the things that they want to do, that they have chosen, and they're doing them by themselves, it forgets social learning. And social learning is, we know, incontrovertibly part of high-quality education. We increasingly know, as Kuliash mentioned at the outset, that the connection that young people feel with their school is vital. School connectedness explains educational outcomes, as does well-being, the cognitive outcomes of education, and so on. They are all important, as David told us. There's the research. School provides access to this extraordinary thing, a learning community. And that learning community includes individual learning, but it also includes social learning, school connectedness, dispositions towards learning, high-quality pedagogy, and high-quality didactics. And that's where the rhetoric around personalized learning has been going wrong. It says that individual learning is the model of learning. It's not. It's a mode of learning. It's only when you fit it within this model of learning can you actually be consistent with research and what we know about high-quality pedagogy, schooling, and outcomes around the world. Eric Hanushek, economist, Harvard, wants to achieve equity and attainment. And it's only when you use that kind of approach to describing a learning model can you obtain both equity and attainment. The problem with a lot of personalized learning is it can encourage a widening of the equity gap. Where should we go for thinking about learning models? I will mention Lucy Crehan's brilliant work where she went around the world. We've synthesized this recently for Sweden, Jane Mellenby's work in Oxford, and of course Peter's founding work on the distinction between Socratic and Confucian models, all vital and important to know. And we have been affected by a pandemic. But gaps have opened up, just as we've increased the use of technology. There are risks in the wrong model of personalization and learner responsibility. The upside from pandemic is we've seen greater use of digital support for structured work outside contact time. Now that's a great asset because there is a strong relationship between thinking outside contact time and attainment. If you think about maths outside the time that you have with your teacher, you will do better at mathematics. The kind of applications that meet good criteria in terms of learning theories encourage thinking outside contact time, encourage self-study outside schooling. That's great. There has been a severe impact to the pedagogy on equality, but it's often discussed just in terms of missing out on parts of subjects. But the losses for some children have been far greater than that. Yes, impact one, learning losses in terms of discipline content, but impact in terms of learning approaches and learning habits, impact in terms of social and emotional engagement with institutions, school connectedness, then the direct emotional impact of stress and lack of social integration, and, crucially, the formation of personal and learning identity. That's what the learning community does for you when you participated in it, in a school. It addresses all of those things, as Kuliash outlined. Iram mentioned the importance of using neuroscience in understanding personal learning, and we should. Here is another representation entirely consistent with the research that Iram put up, which is the brilliant work of Kurt Fischer, showing how if you want people to move from just knowing isolated things to moving to higher levels of critical thinking, where their thinking exists in the form of complex neural networks, where very complex concepts can be brought into relationship with one another, and new principles and new observations and new knowledge created, then that's the kind of pathway that a person follows. That's a map of personal learning. But it does not mean that that learning takes place in isolation. And that's the problem of many of the policy statements and the rhetoric from many of the developers in the tech industry in emphasizing personalized learning as an isolated process. You see, we are still experiencing constant emphasis of false oppositions. Knowledge versus skills, subjects versus themes. The left-hand side of these columns, the left-hand side is seen as traditional. We did it in the past, and we're not doing it anymore. The right-hand side is seen as modern, and something we will do in the future, and we should be moving towards now. That is nonsense. The very best learning processes in digital materials, in schools, in universities, in early learning, doesn't present these as oppositions. They use all of these to explain and structure young people's learning. If we look at this photograph, this is from a very high achieving but very mixed intake primary school. Here are kids engaged in social learning. They are discussing the things they've written. They've externalized their thinking. They've made it an object of their own thought and made their thinking an object that can be criticized and scrutinized by others. That's what's important. It reveals students' thinking to other people. Let's look at this, a Chinese classroom. How can this be personalized learning? How is that possible? They're all reading out from the same text. They're all doing the same thing at the same time. How can that be personalized? Look at it another way, and this classroom is incredibly personalized. Yes, all the children are doing the same thing, but the teacher is monitoring each and every child's participation. In this class, at the end of the class, 5 children are taken away at the end to say, well, your responses to my many questions which I gave during that lesson, I was worried about them, so here is some additional work that you must complete. And a text goes home to the parents. And we can see this when we flip the classroom the other way. Again, the teacher is directing the young people through the content, but they're all focused on the same idea. In here, between 50 and 120 questions, where the teacher can monitor the way in which each person's thinking is building up. Here, much more problematic. A classroom in England, where the kids on the different tables in this school, okay, they're okay. They are working on the same idea. They will go on to discuss it. But another class in another school, which looks identical, the kids on one table say, I'm in the blue group, and the kids on the other table are in the red group. And we don't talk very much, because they're good at mathematics and we are not. And we find in that Shanghai classroom 120 questions. And we find in that good English classroom the teacher saying, children, what's multiplication? And the children all say what they think multiplication is. And they all discuss each other's ideas. And Lucy describes those differences in this brilliant book. And the text is quite extraordinary. They discuss common mistakes or misunderstandings. Misunderstandings are rich and used as part of experience. 2 more minutes. Now, you're not making a mistake. Those are all the same. But it's 3 different kids. And look, they've all got a green box. If you're a teacher, you don't need to worry about these kids, because they came into the secondary school with a low score from primary school. So they're going to get a low grade in their mathematics at the age of 16. We know this from the score that they got in their primary school. And the technology tells the teacher that. Don't worry about them. When I interviewed these kids, I was very worried about them. Because the top kid, after a short intervention, it turned out that they had a low score, but they could achieve, if with a lot of support, they could achieve the target grade. The second child hated mathematics and needed a great deal more support. At the end of the program, she only got a 3, not a 4. Not enough support had been given. The other child we found had been educationally misclassified. The technology was telling the teacher that this kid was fine. But when we interviewed the child, we found he was mathematically gifted. And in the end, with a short intervention, he obtained a grade 8 in the exam. The technology had told the teachers, these are identical, these kids. They've come in with a poor score from their primary schools. But that score is composed of the ability of the child and the quality of the curriculum in the school from which they came. And the teachers had forgotten that. This technology, the use of this flight path technology, had created a cycle of low expectations for the children. I'm going to get a low grade, it told them. And so they thought that. The teachers thought at the age of 11, they're going to get a low grade at the age of 16, so I'm not going to give them any challenging maths. And yet the school said, we do personalized learning because we plug all the data of each and every individual child into this management system. That's very bad personalized learning. It's bad for the kids, it's bad for the school, and it's bad for the nation. So to finish, we have different models, and I think we can put them into 3 categories. Each, personalization, every child at their own pace. No. Secondly, personalization, triage, and assigning them to the route, like that system I've just described. No. But personalization 3, the kind of things that Peter will talk about, screening, careful testing to see where a child is, supporting, engaging, involving them in oracy, varying their experiences, and giving them a chance to practice and reveal misconceptions. Personalization, absolutely yes. That's the model we should go for. Cognitive development, development of learning dispositions, harnessing social learning, developing school connectedness, improving outcomes and attainment. Now the thing is, those are the kind of ideas that you should use to judge any technology that you're thinking about learning, about using. Technology can support learning, of course it can. And I've just come straight from a school which is doing it brilliantly. But the underpinning learning model behind that piece of technology and how it's harnessed by the learning model that is present in the school is fundamental to achieving equity, improving equity, and raising attainment. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you so much for this indeed enlightening presentation. And from this really insightful and informative introduction, we are turning into examples and best practices. So I'd like to invite Dr. Mehista, and his topic is learner and teacher autonomy and co-agency, lessons from Estonia education success story. Please.
Salamat Sisbey, здравствуйте, hello. It's a delight to be here in Astana at this global event, which is the NIS 13th International Conference, Research to Practice Conference. This is the title, but in a sense, I would remove the word PISA from that title because really, Estonia hasn't fetishized PISA. The key issue is what is helping to make Estonia's education system successful. It's based on 3 years of looking at the system, and I've just published a book on it. And this is what this talk is based on. Learn the key focus, but I'll be trying to offer just some concrete examples, but always trying to return to the broader context. This morning, Kulyash Nagatayevna and Iram spoke about the importance of early learning. I did full salary leave to be with their child for the first 18 months of life. Furthermore, Estonia invests more into preschool education than the OECD average. That is where a lot of attention goes, and over 92% of parents are placing their children into preschools. That's part of the success story. So the structure, I'll be looking at taking an ecosystemic view, some examples from one school, some national support mechanisms, some formative assessment tools, and finally, a parting thought. So let's start with an ecosystemic view. Learner autonomy is tied very much to teacher autonomy, which is tied to school autonomy. Of course, that doesn't mean schools can do anything they want or students can do anything they want, but they get to make a lot of decisions. In Estonian schools, teachers and schools can make about 58% of the decisions made can be made at the local level. But as one is operating in autonomy, that doesn't, as I said, mean you can do anything you want. There is state direction and there is public accountability. For instance, there is a national curriculum, which is broad and broad brushstrokes. It's quite general. And what has to happen at the school level, schools have to create their own curriculum. And the vast majority of teachers report actually being involved in the process. They must become professionals, take responsibility for what is happening in the school. As well, schools must do self-evaluations. That self-evaluation must be public. They use that to develop a school strategic plan. And then there's open access to data on achievement and well-being. When we make our plans public, when the data is public, we're far more likely to stick to our commitments and have to deal with any problems that come out through the data. So in a sense, we have state direction, accountability, and the professionalization of education. The feeling is that teachers are professionals, school directors are professionals. They need to assume the responsibility, develop their curriculum, develop their own formative assessment systems, etc., but the state does provide support. So here are two concrete examples at the school level. First one about teachers, the next one about students. This is Pelgulinna Gymnasium in Tallinn, and this school has been visited by Kulyash Nagatayevna and a few others who are here today. And the reason I've selected this school is because it is not one of the elite schools in the nation. It was 123rd in the exams leagues table. Estonia is a small country, 1.3 million. We only have about 500 schools. This wasn't a great result, especially since some primary schools don't fit into that league table. But the school decided several years ago to take a new focus, and they're focusing on teacher cooperation, learner autonomy, and well-being for all. And that teacher cooperation includes a strong element of teacher autonomy. Now, without really trying, the school is number 60 in the league tables, having focused on primarily other things. Of course, the story is more complex, but nonetheless, one key conclusion is focus on learner autonomy, focus on teacher cooperation, you'll probably get better exam results. What's one thing the school has done? It has set up teacher learning circles. Initially, they were completely voluntary. Eventually, they became obligatory, but teachers could choose themselves which learning circle they go into. They could choose their own topic, what they wanted to focus on. And here we can see that they're focusing last year on learning skills, one group, another group on integrated learning, another group on lesson study. Some just wanted teacher professional development. The school director said, fine. The school director, the Zavod, do not go in, the deputy director, into these circles. And of course, these circles also cooperate amongst themselves. Teachers transfer knowledge from each circle. This is every Wednesday for 75 minutes. Every teacher is free to work in these circles. This year, this school is focusing just on two things: learning skills, helping students to build the capacity to be autonomous, and lesson study, having teachers focus on their own lessons, how they are models of learning, how they become better at the work they are doing. Both of these strategies have a very high effect size, according to John Hattie. So also, these groups are sharing knowledge now. What about students? In grades 5 to 11, so if I'm in grade 5, I'm in Estonia, I'm 12 years old. 4 face-to-face days per week for 3 out of the 5 semesters or terms a year. 1 day per week, independent work. Now that doesn't mean students just do what they want to do. They have plans, assignments, and they must self-regulate and they must plan their own learning. They learn to become autonomous, but they also have a clear program of the knowledge and the skills they need to acquire. Also, there are assignments that they're given that integrate several subjects, and each term there are different subjects being integrated. What is key? Connections create meaning. And consequently, this seems to be a really strong aspect of this program. Teachers are available to support students at the school or online as required. And students begin to practice this already in the 4th grade to get ready for it. National level support, 3 examples of 3 measures. There are many, I'm only picking 3. Social pedagogues. In principle, these people are available in every school and in regional centers. What do these people do? They've been trained to teach social and emotional skills and how to deal with challenges in coping with one's circumstances and social situations. In principle, there should be one in every school. We're having trouble getting all the teachers we need and specialists, but these people are also available if they're not available in a school, in a regional center. Let's talk about learning development advisory centers across the entire country. They were founded in 2008, and they're all over the country. They offer psychologists, speech therapists, and social pedagogues. And the key point, no referral required. That means that any parent, any student, any teacher can go and ask for help. And we know the number of people asking for help is rising every year, which means they must be providing a good service, at least on some level. It hasn't been thoroughly researched yet. As of 2004, there are also development conversations. They take place with students at least 1 a year. And this starts from grade 1 until grade 12. In other words, throughout the system, support. The goal is to support students in reflecting on, evaluating, and taking responsibility for their learning. And it includes a signed agreement with a student, with parents and teachers on future goals and plans. Students, before they come to this, older students, this is an example from upper secondary, lower and upper secondary, one school. They answer 15 questions before they come. Let me just show you 3 of those questions. What brings you joy in school? What do you do when you witness bullying or someone being picked on? Bullying is a problem in Estonian schools. It probably is a problem in every country. It's being dealt with and looked at. And what would you like to change in yourself in order to become more successful to achieve better results? Of course, teachers and parents need to also do that reflection and reflect on how they can support the student. This was Järva-Jaani Gymnasium in Estonia. So, assessment. Does Estonia assess? Yes, we do have summative assessment. But the education policy imperative is the primary purpose of assessment is to support learning. And here I'd like to stress that we're not just talking about students, but also it's a means for the system to learn. National examinations in Estonia were first set up to help people at the ministry understand whether the curriculum was effective. So it's very much for helping teachers and the education system to learn. And it really pushes personal and collective responsibility as opposed to external control. One of the driving mantra in Estonia, I think, is that teachers are professionals. You need to trust them. Summative assessment. Yes, we do have summative assessment. Grade 9, nationally developed state exams, mathematics, Estonian first language or second language, and a third subject of students' choice. They're marked by the school, they enter the data in a national database, and students can resit the school exam if they fail. Average marks per school go into the public domain. What about grade 12? Grade 12, state exams in mathematics, Estonian, first language or second language, and a foreign language. That's it, 3 exams. There are external observers, centrally marked, not marked by the school, and the average marks per school go into the public domain. But this is only part of the system, and Estonia is trying to do a lot to make sure we do not give too much emphasis on on this one indicator or several indicators. So what about formative assessment? Let's start with school evaluation and inspections. Only at-risk schools are now inspected. Last year, I think it was 26 schools in total, out of 500 and several. So it's a small percentage that are inspected, and the goal is, if there's a problem, it's not to punish those schools, it's to find out how to support them in their development. There are guidelines offered for self-evaluation. Self-evaluation reports are used as a basis for creating the school's strategic plan. Professionalization of the school, the local government, making people concentrate on what their own issues are. And can things go wrong? Yes. Some local government official might actually punish a school. This happened once in one case for being truthful. What a mistake. The local government official obviously could benefit from further support through professional development, which the person received. There are many national formative assessment instruments. So the state's view is this: if we're going to say in Estonia formative assessment is important, the state will also provide something. So it provides plenty of professional development in this area. 3% of a school budget in the old days used to go to professional development. 5 minutes, thank you. Now, 2%, that 2% is in the hands of the state, and the state decides that this year it's going to be professional development in formative assessment. So there are many instruments. There are learning to learn and self-management tests, communication and self-management tests, scientific literacy tests, mathematical linguistic literacy tests, competence-based maths, L1 and L2 tests, student surveys, digital literacy tests, digital school mirror that helps schools focus on how they can reform themselves using digital tools, and student research projects, and as mentioned, development conversations. What I'm giving you at the moment is just part of the story. There is so much more that is making the system work. Among these formative assessment instruments, the tests aim to promote the use of assessment as a powerful means for supporting student and teacher learning, encourage an evidence-based approach to teaching. They're largely voluntary, unless you're part of the sample. They're mark-free in principle. They help identify strengths and development needs, and they are feedback generating. Are there problems with these tests? Yes. One of the key things is that you don't give up on something that's not working perfectly. You keep improving it from year to year. Cannot by law be used to create marks or decide a student's future, because some people did try to do that. So communication, learning to learn, and self-management tests. Teachers assign tests, students take the test unless they're in the sample. They can be administered in grades 2, 3, 6, and 8. No marks are given. There's a voluntary teacher survey on teaching practices, and this is for triangulation with student responses. Feedback reports to the teacher. The principal does not have access to the report. They're meant to be there to support the teacher. And teachers are advised to work with a school psychologist. There's scientific, mathematic, and linguistic literacy tests. They measure current capacity to apply subject-specific core concepts and big ideas. Administered at the start of grades 4 and 7, that means you can immediately apply the learning. And the science tests are being piloted in grade 10, and no marks are given in principle. Feedback, feed-forward reports under 4 headings: knowledge. Knowledge is important. Analytical, planning, and interpretation skills as well, getting an emphasis. How much? 2 minutes, thank you. Principals do not have access to the teacher reports. Once again, it's a tool to support the teacher, not to control, to support. Competence tests in diverse subjects, they're voluntary. Currently, they target mathematics, grade 5, 8, 9, and 10, and Estonian as a second language in grades 5 and 8. Chemistry and physics tests under development. Feed-forward reports to the teacher in groups. Principals do not have access to the reports. I would just like to come to, and of course, there are surveys. And the key thing about surveys is to promote student and teacher well-being. Grade 4, 8, and 11 students surveyed annually. Overall experience of well-being in school. Satisfaction with specific aspects of the learning environment. Satisfaction with external factors, which respondents may associate with school satisfaction. And all of this is based on self-determination theory, autonomy, self-efficacy, connectedness, and public access to general information. And I'm going to just show you one diagram. A school would very quickly get an overview of how it's functioning. And so if we look up at the top, we see cooperative teaching. We get feedback on how much teachers cooperate. One of the key ways to help students learn is cooperation, autonomy, connectedness, exhaustion. We've gone through a lot. I'm going to just leave you with a parting thought. These are students from the OECD's Future of Education and Skills 2030. they just remind us of the following. We don't just need to learn to succeed on exams. Notice, they want to succeed on exams. They think exams are important. We need to learn how to succeed in life. And on that note, I say, Rahmet, spasiba vam, thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it was very interesting, and especially for our colleagues, I think, here, because we really like learning from examples. And it's my privilege to introduce and welcome on stage Dr. Simon Brownhill. His research and writing interests include supporting adult learners, creative assessment, children's writing, their physical development and effective behavior management, self-reflection, education in Australasia, and the male role in early years. And his topic is, this time is, it's personalized learning. Please.
Rahmet, spasiba, dobry dzień, kayla kun. Before we start, I want to say what a great honor it is to have been invited back to Kazakhstan. I feel that I am back home. Like the little boy in this picture, I am very proud. I'd like to show you an image. These are children from Kazakhstan. I'd like you to take a look at them. I'd like you, in a moment, to take your headsets off and to talk to the person next to you. How do you think that these children learn? So please take your headsets off and talk to the person next to you. How do you think these children learn? Rahmet, spasiba. The research evidence is clear. The one-size-fits-all model to traditional education is based on a false idea that every student in a given class is performing at the same level, be it academically, behaviorally, and socially, and that they all need the same things. As a result, there are many students in classrooms all across the world who are bored, who are frustrated, and who cannot access the learning that is available to them. Research suggests, from the early years, the British Association for Early Childhood Education clearly advocates the idea that children develop at their own rates and learn in their own ways. And this poses a key question. How can teachers and schools effectively offer opportunities for learners to respond to their individual and personalized needs? One of the ways that this can be achieved is through personalized learning. And what I'd like to do in this presentation is to reinforce some of the ideas that my two colleagues have shared and to offer some practical advice for teachers and for schools who wish to embrace this idea in their educational settings. When we talk about personalized learning, it's about learning experiences. It's about teaching strategies. It's about addressing the differentiated learning needs, interests, and backgrounds of the children that teachers have the good fortune to work with. It's often described as student-centered learning, differentiated instruction, and learning to tailor the opportunities that learners need to offer them a personalized journey as part of their education experience. Many of the ideas related to personalized learning have come from a number of international contexts: the USA, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And there are many other countries who are embracing the ideas and developing what we know about personalized learning. The research suggests that personalized learning can be conceptualized in different ways. One way relates to the notion of content, where students are able to engage in some content, some topics, some areas that are of personal interest to them. We have personalization through pace and progress, where some children can progress through content and curriculum levels with support and guidance, but taking into consideration their needs. The process of learning in terms of instructional approaches and learning environments can be varied based on interest and student need. The benefits of personalized learning are plentiful. Here are just 4 of them. Personalized learning gives some ownership of students' learning. It offers some pace of learning. It offers children some choice and possibilities. And evidence suggests that personalized learning can increase student attainment. Now, if you took a school in Astana, and if you took a school in Attrau, and asked them to explore and show how personalized learning is being embraced in the school, it would be different. Because the beauty of personalized learning is that there are different models that can be embraced. Several of these have been hinted at by Tim, but there are other models. Time will not allow us to look at these in great detail, but schools and teachers have the opportunity to make a choice about the model or approach that they feel is right for their learners to be able to embrace personalized learning as part of their provision and practice. I have a very small amount of time with you, and so rather than thinking about these models, I would like to think a little bit about classroom practice, and to think about what the teachers and schools in Kazakhstan could do to embrace the idea of personalized learning in their provision. I share with you a pedagogy of personalized learning framework, a wheel, that identifies 9 key features. Even though they are identified individually in this framework, they work together, they link, and they overlap. But for purposes of time, we're going to focus on the red point, the notion of high-quality learning and teaching. So how can educators in Kazakhstan embrace high-quality learning and teaching that is rooted in the ideas of personalized learning? Well, one way is to offer students some choice, offering them opportunities to play to their interests and their strengths, offering them some opportunities to represent their learning in different ways, opportunities where they have some choice about the questions that they answer as part of their homework, where they have some choice with regards to the text that they engage with. When teachers are working with their students in the classroom, they need to have strategies that will allow them to cater for the needs of learners. And these are some of the best strategies that research says can be used to embrace some of the principles that underpin personalized learning. Good practice advocates the use of inclusive questioning, where all learners are targeted at different levels. The flipped classroom, which some of you may be aware of or may use in your own educational settings, is a good way of supporting the personalized learning needs of children. Guided group work is important so that students have quality time with their teachers, but also complementing that is the use of one-to-one time where that is possible. I'd like to show you another image of a child from Kazakhstan. Every child and young person in this country deserves to be successful. They deserve to achieve their potential and to become active citizens in safe and secure environments. The evidence suggests that world-class schools are embracing the idea of personalized learning as a way to transform their provision so that children and young people at every stage of their educational career can grow and develop. I would like to show you a little animation. I want you to imagine that one of the stars is a family member. It could be your son or your daughter. It could be a niece or a nephew. It could be a male or female cousin or a grandson or granddaughter. Every day, they pass through different subjects. Every year, they pass through another grade. Every few years, they pass through a different stage of the education system. Every child and young person in Kazakhstan deserves the best education. And if we can embrace aspects of personalized learning in our practice, we can show commitment to this empowering approach to benefit the future of learner growth. So for everyone in this room, I set you a small challenge. I'd like you to be brave. I'd like you to embrace the idea of personalized learning and take it back into your schools and your classrooms. It has the potential to make students masters of their own destiny. Rahmet, spasiba.
Көп рахмет сізге, құрметті Саймон.
Thank you very much, Simon. Next, we give the floor to Daryl West, Vice President of the Professional Services, McGraw-Hill Education. The topic of the presentation is the digital resources, adaptive technologies, and personalized education.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? If I had to measure that on a success ratio, you're not doing very good. So good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Okay, that's a little better. That's a little better. You know, I appreciate my colleagues because the hard thing about going last is you don't know what they're going to say before you that was part of your presentation. So we're looking at personalized learning. But before we head into that, one of the things that I want you to know that research still shows is the #1 factor in the success of a student in school is the classroom teacher. How many of you are teachers? Raise your hand. How many of you are administrators? Raise your hand. And I just want you to remember it's a great responsibility because the fact that you're the #1 most important factor in that student's success is paramount to what we do every day in the classroom. Now, my background, I'm not a researcher, I'm a practitioner. I was a math and science teacher for about 25 years. I know you're thinking you look way too young. I'm not hearing a lot of agreement on that. That's bothering me a little bit. But in that 25 years, I learned a lot of things, being that and an administrator. So we're going to take a few minutes and actually walk through a little bit about personalized learning. Now, when we come to personalized learning, there are a number of words that are tossed around that get very blurred when we use them. Now, one of those words anymore in my background, because I was a science math teacher, is the word inquiry. And if you ask 10 different people, you would probably get 10 different definitions of what inquiry means. And we come into the same situation when we think about blended learning and we think about personalized learning and some other words I'm going to introduce during the little bit of time that we have together. Now, as we go into that, there's a couple things. Now, this picture you're seeing up in front of the screen are 2 of my 4 children. They are my younger 2. The one in the front is my daughter. She was about 16 there. She's now 30, so it tells you how old the picture is. And my son is in the background. They grew up in the same family. They went to the same schools. They had many of the same experiences, and yet they are 2 such different people. In fact, we were out backpacking. We used to do that a week every summer. This is in Washington State in Olympic National Park, and it's beautiful. When we started out, we were in the rainforest, and then as we continued hiking, we got up above the tree line, and we had to do some rock scrambling. We're going down in a big gulch. There are no trees around us at all. Now, one thing about my son is he's not very excitable. When he came home from school, I would ask him, how was school today? And his answer was, do you want to guess? His answer was, boring. Whereas if my daughter came home, she would be telling me all about the things that she did. Well, one of the things that happened on this trip is after we hiked down this, we came to a ridge and there were no trees on it, and he was in front of me about from here to the gentleman right in front of me. And when he got to the top, he looked over and he said, "This is awesome." And you know what I knew at that moment? I was going to see something spectacular. And when I crossed the top of this, that's what I saw. And it's the Blue Glacier, and back behind it is Mount Olympus. And you know what? That experience that he had right there, where he said, "This is awesome," is the experience we want every one of our students in our classes to have. We want the awesome moments. And you know what the difference? I have 3 girls and a boy. My 3 girls, they were just good students. What the teacher asked of them, they did. They excelled. My son, if he liked the teacher, he excelled. If he didn't really like the teacher, he didn't do so well, and so I had to check up on him. So what we want of our students with the idea of blended and personalized learning is we want each of them to have some of these awesome moments where they're inspired. So if we think about this, one of the other reasons personalized learning is so important is these 2 numbers up here. That first one, by the way, these are very different numbers from a mathematical background. That 80 million is how many STEM jobs are expected to turn up in the next 15 years in the United States. That's a quarter of the new jobs that will happen will be in STEM careers over the next 15 years. NIS is working on, I get to spend time with my colleagues yesterday and today, and are working on some great personalized learning ideas for STEM orientation. But if we don't support our students in the areas that they need, they won't be eligible for many of these careers. And we need to make sure they have that opportunity. The 15 plus is what's projected to be the new categories of jobs that we haven't even thought of yet that will exist by the time those students reach those careers. So let's think about the terminology a little bit. One of the things about those STEM jobs that's very important is there are other careers that many of our parents or many of us had an opportunity to fulfill that are going to disappear. If you look at the list on there, what we're doing with technology right now is we're replacing as many of those jobs as we can by automating them. And what that means is jobs that students could get without training in STEM or higher level careers are disappearing for many of them. Now let me give you one example of this. Let me show you just a little brief video that kind of highlights that. And what you are seeing right there is an Amazon warehouse. Whereas 15 years ago, we would have had men and women in that warehouse moving packages, getting things ready to ship. The majority of that work is now done by the robots that are moving around, grabbing the things, bringing them up. Now, there are still people in that warehouse, but many of the people that would have been there, in fact, most of those people are no longer working in those kind of jobs because we're automating them. And that's going to continue to happen, and it's one reason we certainly need to personalize instruction for our students. So, we have to help students learn how to learn. And in fact, Dr. Brownhill indicated that because I indicated the idea that we have to give students autonomy in their learning. Not in everything, but in parts of their learning. So if we think about some of the language that we use, I want you to take a minute. I want you to stand up, turn to the person next to you, and define for them these two phrases or words. What is blended learning? What is personalized learning? Take about 30 seconds to do that. I want you to stand up because you've been sitting for a while. Take about 30 seconds. What is blended learning? What is personalized learning?
У вас микрофоны нормально, да? Проверите просто на всякий случай.
Now, a necessity. But if you think about this, blended learning involves leveraging technology to afford each student a more personalized learning experience, meaning increased student control over time, place, path, or pace of his learning. And that was made obvious in the last session. Blended learning is the use of some things in school, some things out of school. Some things with technology, some things without technology. But they offer an opportunity for personalization because of choice in the matters that we see up on the screen. But blended learning is not personalized learning. It can be, but it is not by definition. And what I mean by that, if I do a flipped classroom where every student has to watch a video before they come or interact with a virtual lab before they come with classroom, and then we spend time discussing it, I didn't necessarily personalize the situation for that student. Blended learning is the mix of in-person and out of school, the mix of technology and the use of non-technology. So, one of the things we're going to see is we actually want to move the classroom to where students are having both experiences, because as was stated in the first presentation today, a lot of student learning happens by interaction with teachers and with other students, and in fact with their parents, their community, and their siblings. So we don't want to remove the individualization, we don't want to remove the interaction, we want to personalize some of those experiences. Let's take a look at the second one, okay? Personalization. Now, like I said a minute ago, there are a lot of different definitions of this. Personalization, the learner and the teacher collaborate to drive learning and determine needs, plan, and learning design. Now, let me say this. This does not mean that in my classroom, every student is on their own path all the time. We all in our classrooms have standards that we have to cover. We all have a scope and sequence we have to cover. But here's the major thing I want you to think about if you think about the differences like between my son and my daughter. If I'm teaching a mathematics class and I have 30 students in that class, how many different places are they in their learning journey? How many? They're in 30 different places in their learning journey. Some of the ways we do our schools, if you're in a certain grade level, you're in a certain class. The last school I was in, I was the dean of students. I worked with the 9th and 10th graders that were not performing well in the middle grades. Some of them had failed 7th and 8th grade math, and in 9th grade we were putting them in Algebra 1. Guess what's going to happen to that student in Algebra 1? They're not going to be successful because they're missing the foundational skills they need to be a success. That's where one place that personalization can help them. How many of my teachers in here, you teach upper grades, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? Okay. How many teach 4, 5, and 6? Well, I got a lot of people that snuck in that are not teaching, evidently, because they didn't see a lot of hands go up. Here's one thing I do want you to know, though. If you have a student in your class, regardless of the grade level, that their skills are 2 or more grade levels below the work that you're doing in that class, you can personalize every lesson, and that student is going to continue to struggle. Because really what they need is intervention, not just support in the current struggles, because they're missing too many previous level skills and prerequisites. A student that's in that class that's a grade level below or a grade level above, there's a lot of personalization that can be done to support them. But we also need to think about the students that need more support than the classroom teacher can give. But that personalization, the teacher and the learner kind of collaborate on the direction they're going for support or for acceleration. Let me give you a third one. Differentiation. I often see these two mixed up. Typically, all of us as teachers have differentiated, but most teachers can successfully differentiate on 2 to 3 levels in their classroom with appropriate scaffolds. It's hard, especially the more you get up and the more students you have in your class, to personalize a learning path for every single student. So we as teachers typically differentiate. We do it in groupings. But if I have 30 students on 30 different levels and I group in 3 levels, I'm going to have a lot of students that I don't hit their individual needs. It's not that differentiation is bad. It's not. It's good. But we need to build beyond that. The next one is individualization. This is where I work with one student to help them meet their goals. I personalize it for one, but really what we want to do is scale this so we can personalize for every student. And then I'm going to throw one other term up here, okay? Adaptive learning. I often hear adaptive learning confused with personalization. Adaptive learning is a method that uses technology to help personalize learning. It orchestrates and mediates resources based on student outcomes. The computer adapts the presentation according to the student's needs. And this is one place where technology can definitely help our students achieve by personalizing in the way we as an individual can't with that classroom of 30 students or even more than that amount. Now, can you personalize without adaptive technology? The answer is yes. The problem is, though, the amount of time and the number of students we have in order to actually adapt the pathway for every single student in our classroom, whether they're struggling with skills that are prerequisite or whether they need to be challenged to move ahead. Adaptive technology helps us scale the amount of learning that takes place. Now, there are different ways you can do this. And I know my colleagues here at NIS are working on some of those ways and thinking about other ways. I want to give you one example of this. It was mentioned earlier in one of the sessions this morning. This is a program that has been created called ALEX. ALEX is for 3rd to university students in mathematics. And the way that ALEX works is based on a knowledge space theory algorithm. Students take an initial assessment, And it identifies what they know, what they don't know, but most importantly, what that student is ready to learn based on the prerequisite ideas they already know. So when a student goes into ALEKS, they take about a 30-minute, we call it a knowledge check. That knowledge check, based on the algorithm, defines exactly these three things. And the reason I have that beautiful color chart up there, we call that the ALEKS pie. Based on the grade level the student's in, that's broken down into the domains of knowledge of mathematics and shows exactly in those domains what the student knows, which domains they're strong in, and then where they need the most development. If I gave a knowledge check to a grade 10 student and they perform very, very low, I can drop them down into a previous topic level and help them succeed. Students, when they address topics that they're ready to learn, are found to be 93% successful in mastering that topic. And one of the things about adaptive learning, it recircles back around because it doesn't just attempt that the student automatically is going to retain that information. Now, where does this fit in the classroom? And by the way, in my session tomorrow, my breakout session, we're really going to go into some depth in this, in looking how to use technology to personalize. But I would say this does not replace what the classroom teacher is doing around their standards in the classroom. This supports the individual student in being able to master that work. So every one of our students in mathematics has that moment where they say, this is awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear Darrell. I'm really happy that we are concluding with big hope for technology. And this is what we've been doing in cooperation with NIS, adapting adaptive technology to bring personalization. And I think all our speakers were very brilliant today. So please join me and give a round of applause to all our speakers. Thank you so much.
Distinguished participants to the conference, dear teachers, dear colleagues, indeed, those who were born and raised in the same family, same school, they won't be the same in life. They would be diverse. In this current life, with the help of technology, with the overall changes that are taking part in this on this globe, there are opportunities to support the diversity of people in their special needs, in their special talents, and their special achievements. There are opportunities that are supported by the current achieved progress, and the NIS schools are basing their activities on all of the progress that has been attained in the area of technology. We have today contributed to the overall efforts in supporting each child in their learning pathways, and these are the words for me to close this part and pass it.
Құрметті конференцияның қатысушылары, ауылдық жерлерде
Dear
жердің
participants,
әлеуетін дамыту қайырымдылық жобасының бас демеушілері атынан Қазақстан халқына
on behalf
қоры
of the
төрағасының
supporters and
Ләззат
sponsors
Мамытбекқызы
of the
Шыңғысбаева.
development of
Айтас
schools
КСР акционерлік қоғамы әлеуметтік дамыту
in
саласының вице-президенті
rural
Ксения
areas,
Бербак.
please let me
Білім беруді тұрақты дамыту қорының
name
басшысы Данияр Салауатұлы
our
Тоқтарбаев.
achievers.
Сондай-ақ Назарбаев зияткерлік мектептері дербес білім беру ұйымының басқарма төрайымы Күләш Ноғатайқызы Шамшидинова шақырылады.
Сөз кезегі өздеріңізде.
Thank you so much. I'm Sofia Sagaliyeva, the Managing Director of Kazakhstan Khalkana Foundation. When in January our fund was created, we in January were thinking what we can do in education, and developing schools in rural areas was our first project we're very proud of. We understand that when we talk about the quality of human capital, we mean and imply education. When we talk about equity and income, we imply education. 70% of schools in our country are rural. More than half of them are small rural schools. And we knew this was our target audience that the foundation must work with, but we didn't know how to approach that. And these are the people who gave us the ideas, and thanks to Kulyash Nagataevna, today we are implementing those ideas, and they make us happy because all children, independent of the area they live in, independent of their social status, they must have equal opportunities for self-realization, self-actualization. Therefore, it's our honor to present this Rural School Development Project. Greetings, dear participants. Today's international conference is a great event. I would like to thank you for participation. On behalf of ITAS and Serik Perikbaev, we would like to thank Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools, the team of Kazakhstan. In 2019, we started the small project with Kulyash Nagataevna, and this July we signed a memorandum with Kazakhstan Khalkana Foundation for 17 schools in 17 rural areas. I think Daniyar will be the one to describe the project in brief, and then there will be an award ceremony. Greetings, dear colleagues. Let me briefly describe this project. Partners and us and our sponsors, NIS, we take just a small rural school. We review and analyze the school's needs. After that, there is capacity enhancement, trainings, professional development for teachers in residency at NIS. And using the sponsors' money, we improve the material equipment of the schools. And you have seen that in the video. Let me be concise. We started with one school in 2019, then there were 3, then there were 4. This year there is 22, and we hope that next year at least half of today's 1,000 participants will be our partners at those 500 rural schools, and they will be listening to the speakers who spoke today. So we hope to have rural teachers next year in this hall. The fact that we want the achievements of Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools to be shared with rural schools. Therefore, we appreciate ITAS, Kazakhstan Khalkana, and Sustainable Education Development organizations, our sponsors. We thank them, and we hope that there will be more participants and more businessmen and sponsors and methodologists and fellow researchers who would be working for the good of the rural schools of our beloved motherland. Our 17 schools will receive today their rural awards, and here on the stage there is a small methodology library, and each of the 17 rural schools will receive those books. And let us show, please, our 17 schools. Akmola region, the principal is Mr. Musin. North Kazakhstan, Valikhanov, Kshkenyakol Secondary School, and Mr. Sakyan Medet, East Kazakhstan, Korsham, Markakol, the first secondary school. Mr. Orkbayev, Kostanay region, village of Sarykul, number 1 secondary school, Mr. Ivanov, the principal. Atarau region, Savkonovka village, secondary school, Mr. Sapragali Tolezhanov. Almaty region, Turar School of Secondary School, Miss Makasheva is the principal. And West Kazakhstan, the city of Aksai, and the secondary school represented by Miss Simbieva, the principal. Pavlodar region, Yertes, the 4th secondary school, Mr. Suraganov is the principal. Karaganda region, a secondary school named after Kulyash Baseitova. Bestamak village secondary school, Stigulova Annar is the principal. Shauldar village secondary school number 4. Mr. Aribekov, Saudakent village secondary school, represented by Ms. Tursunbekova. Aral City Secondary School, Mr. Ayjanov is the principal, and Mangostau region, the village of Bineo Secondary School, and Mr. Moldasov is the principal. City, dear project participants, thank you for the creativity and efforts attached to the implementation of this project. We have great prospects. We started with only 1 school, and now there are 17, and I'm sure we will achieve even more. We are sure that the project schools will teach and train other small rural schools. They have a broadcasting station at each project school. So the conference then continues by sections.